Let's start out here. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Invocation given by a volunteer. Please identify yourself and give the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us stand. Let us pray. My name, also I pastor the church, the outdoor church in downtown Bonita Springs. Let us pray together. Father, we come to you and we ask your blessings to be upon our meeting tonight here in Bonita Springs. We thank you for the men and women who serve faithfully each week here, and we thank you for their talent, their skills, their giftingness that they bring to this council. And Lord, as they look at the agenda before them, we ask God that you will provide the wisdom and the guidance, Lord, as they deal with the issues and govern and for the will of the people here. And Lord, we lift up Washington, D.C. tonight. You see the turmoil there. We ask your protection around that city. We pray for our president, the House of Congress, the Senate, and others, employees that work there. We pray, God, that you would protect them, bring peace, God. We pray for our first responders there, that God, that they will be able to handle that in a manner, Lord, that will bring peace. And Lord, we pray for the lady that was shot there. We just pray, God, that your grace would be upon her as she goes through this time, Lord, of an operation and healing. Be with us today, God. Be with our country. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance. Fred, would you lead us today?
Pledge allegiance to the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Fred. Any roll call, Debbie?
Councilwoman Carumba.
Here.
Councilman Purdon.
Here.
Councilwoman Carr.
Here.
Mayor Steinmeier.
Here.
Councilman Corey.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Present.
Councilman Forbes.
Here.
Okay. Approval of the agenda. Is there anything on the agenda that anybody has a question at this time? Public comment. We would like to have a public comment on 8 and 12A when they come up on the agenda. Then we got the mayor. I'm the mayor, and thank you for coming. We are all here to represent you, the people of Bonita Springs. At this time, I'd like to have the district representatives introduce themselves, starting with number 6, the far end here. Fred, would you introduce yourself?
Fred Forbes,
Mike?
District 6.
Mike Gibson, District 5.
Chris Corey, District 4.
Laura Carr, District 3.
Jesse Purdon from the greatest district in Bonita Springs, District 2.
I'm sorry. Amy Cramba, District 1.
Okay, thank you very much. I wanted the people to hear your voices so you're not strangers to them. So thank you. I'm the mayor, and I'd like you to work with your representatives that were elected for your districts. Get to know them. The district maps are available as you came in, if you don't know where your district is. And they know your district, and they represent you. If necessary, you call your mayor, Rick, okay, at 992-3018. Thank you. Now at this time, I missed to say, if you're going to speak, I'd like you to fill out a speaker's form before we speak. Okay, so now we can have public comment, please. Anybody from the public would like to speak? Seeing none, I guess we'll move along. I don't think we don't need a recess right now, I don't believe.
No, Mayor,
Then we go to the staff consent agenda.
no, Mayor, we have the land
Anybody
use
like-
item.
Huh?
We have the land use item. 8A.
Anybody want to pull an item off of this
No,
for discussion?
actually, we have the zoning item first, the
Oh, 8,
variance on
I'm
Hickory
sorry, I
Island.
missed 8A.
No problem. I'll
Okay.
go ahead and read the ordinance into title into the record.
Yes,
This is a zon-
8A, is there anybody here from, to represent?
A
Yes,
zoning,
sir.
a zoning ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs granting a variance from LDC Section 4-1893, which requires a street setback of 25 feet to allow a street setback of 20 feet from LDC Section 4-1894 Sub B, which requires a water body setback of 25 feet to allow a water body setback of 15 feet from the east for a single-family residence and accessory structures in a 6.5-foot from the north of the single-family residence and from section LDC 4-489, which requires a side yard setback of 7.5 feet to allow a side yard setback of 6.5 feet for a single-family residence and accessory structures located at 27783 Hickory Boulevard, Bonita Springs, providing for an effective date. And at this time, I would also like to swear in any public speakers, including staff. If you could just raise your right hand. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Staff is going to give a brief introduction, and then the applicant will give their presentation.
Good evening, Council. Mike Fegon, Community Development for the record. This is a case that was heard by the Zoning Board, who recommended unanimously to approve the variance requests. It was heard by first reading earlier in December, and here we are for the second reading of this case. Camden Ashmore is here representing the owners of the property who made the variance request. He has a brief presentation to outline the variance request and the justification criteria along with it. So I'm going to turn it over to Camden right now.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you for your time. Appreciate your input and insights. So this case today is essentially requesting variances to the setbacks of a parcel zoned in a residential zoning district, RS1, off of Hickory Boulevard. It's roughly 8 lots or so to the north of Docks on the east side of Hickory Boulevard. The lot itself is a non-conforming lot currently. Essentially, it is so there's the, I'll digress for a moment. That's the existing house now, the survey with the existing house that's on there. The owners are proposing to demolish that house. It's below floodplain, it's all sorts of FEMA issues. It's not worth, in their minds, keeping and renovating. Therefore, they are proposing to demolish it and construct a new residence in the area. All right, so being that the lot is non-conforming, it doesn't meet the minimum size of a typical lot in that zoning district. So as such, if we were to subject the proposed house to the allowable setbacks for that zoning district, the red hatched area essentially demonstrates the buildable area for that lot. And on the northern part of that parcel, the setbacks from the rear water body and the front street setback essentially overlap, creating a completely non-usable, non-buildable section of the northern part of this L shape of the parcel. And the deeper parcel to the south, that still doesn't meet the minimum depth requirements for the zoning district, and as such presents a very small buildable area of about 18 foot wide and 34 feet deep or so. It just doesn't make sense for them to construct a house that's that size there. So that's why we're requesting setbacks from there. So the setbacks on the front parcel are on the front of the parcel are 25 feet. The house currently sits at approximately 17 feet from the front setback. So it's already non-existing, non-conforming. We're requesting the front setback be reduced from 25 feet to 20 feet. The side setbacks be reduced from 7.5 feet to 6.5 feet, and the rear water body setbacks be reduced to 15 feet instead of the 25 feet. That will allow us to build a footprint of approximately 37 feet by 46 feet deep, which would constitute about a 3,000 square foot house of total living area between the upper living floors, with the first floor being uninhabitable below FEMA flood plain. So of course the new house would be constructed above that, which is a VE17, and there's an example of our proposed footprint with the setbacks as requested in the variance application. There's not a lot of buildable area on that northern parcel, kind of on the northern section of the L, if you will. So as such, we propose to essentially just elevate a pool bath and pool at finished floor height on that side. Show you. Sorry about that. Gun shy. So that's just the ground floor, proposed preliminary plan for the ground floor. Main living level, which is the elevated first floor level. Second floor. And for the sake of visualization, there's our proposed front elevation to help you understand our objective there. So we are aware that by reducing the side yard setbacks, that could present, encroachment issues with AC equipment and whatnot. We're not proposing to cantilever any equipment pads out past our side yard setbacks whatsoever. We're going to keep the AC equipment tucked within an alcove of the existing, or rather of the building footprint. So rather than have a 7.5 yard side setback with 3 feet of that encroaching to where the edge of the equipment pad is essentially 4.5 feet from the property line, our equipment won't get any closer than 6.5 feet from the property line. So in fact, we're still 2 feet away, further away from where we could be if we cantilevered those decks. And that's just taking into consideration the neighbors' noise and whatnot, so it doesn't present an eyesore and kind of makes it a little bit more friendly on everyone that's around. The south side of the property is where we propose to put the mechanical equipment. So we would obviously have our AC pads elevated up above the floodplain height, and our AC pads will go all the way up to on the 3rd floor. Excuse me, at the 2nd floor of the residence. Yes, sir.
Where is the electrical meter going to be? And do you have to build the steps to get to it?
Our meter, electrical meter?
Yes.
Let's see if we got that far yet in our electrical plans. We have not made it that far yet in planning, so I don't have an educated answer to tell you on that. But in theory, it would be near the mechanical equipment that would be elevated above floodplain.
Yes, well, what I've seen is that they build a set of steps in the setback so the guy can read the meter.
That microphone?
And the setback, I think, is supposed to be open.
Right, so my understanding is that we can't have any stairs encroaching into the setbacks outside of, I guess we have, 3 feet that we can encroach into that. So we have proposed stairs that would be at the rear of the property leading up to the pool deck. But I will put some thought into the location of that panel so it can be accessed by a utility company, no problem.
Okay.
Well, then I would motion to approve as conditioned.
Second.
What was that?
We have a motion and a second
What's that?
to approve.
Motion to approve, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I'm not ready to. We still have a staff report. I'm not ready to approve this yet.
And we would need to open up the public comment as well.
Yes, while I'm at it, commenting on the north side, why do you have a 6.5 foot setback on a 52-foot lot line?
What was the second part of that? I'm sorry. On the north side, the 6.5 foot setback request?
Yes.
And
Why couldn't that be the 7.5 like the law says?
So you propose to keep that at 7.5
Yes.
on the north? Yeah, I don't think that would be a problem. Essentially the north side, that would just make the length of the pool deck slightly smaller, and we can plan for that without issue.
Yeah,
So,
that doesn't seem to affect the size of the house.
agreed.
The neighbors on the south have agreed to what, I saw the presentation at
Correct,
the
yeah.
zoning board. But the only concern I have is the neighbor on the north side. And,
Sure.
so if we can confirm that, I'll vote for you.
That's reasonable. We can keep the north setback on the side setback to the north at 7.5 feet.
I'm gonna go. Do we need to have a presentation or can we vote? Mayor,
Are there any other questions by the council for the applicant? Is there a request for staff to come up and do a final presentation? Seeing none, I would say, Mayor, just open up the public comment to see if there's any neighbors or interested parties who wish to speak, and then you can go forward to a vote.
okay, do we have public comment on this item? Seeing none, Debbie?
Well, no, there is, just to clarify, there's a motion and a second to approve the variance request as is. Is there any request
No,
by the
there's
motion
no-
maker to change that?
To change the north setback on a 52-foot property line to 7.5 feet instead of 6.5 feet.
My recommendation, Mr. Mayor, unless the motion maker and the seconder wish to change their original motion, is to go ahead and move an amendment to the north side to 7.5 feet.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Yes. Okay, got a second from Councilman
Debbie,
Forbes.
we have a roll call
This is on the amendment.
on the amendment.
I'm sorry, I would need to clarify the amendment. I don't understand what the amendment is.
If we could pull up the aerial, the north side, there was a request adjacent to the pool to reduce the setback from 7.5 to 6.5 feet. The mayor, concerned about the neighbors, has asked if that could remain at that portion of the variance request could remain at the 7.5 feet.
That's just at the pool area?
Correct.
So it essentially would be if you're standing at the street, it would be the left side of the residence. And the pool. To the,
And that's not a problem for you?
there we go. So instead, correct, thank you, Mr. Dolmer. That's correct. So we did originally request a 6.5-foot reduction there, a reduction from 7.5 to 6.5 feet, but we're okay if you propose to keep that north setback at 7.5 feet.
Thank you.
Debbie, could you call the roll?
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye. Now you can roll call on the main motion.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye. Variance is approved as modified.
Thank you all for your time.
Okay, the vote was 6-1. Is that what I heard?
No.
No, it's unanimous in both counts.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now we move on to public comment. Come on, folks.
Oh, no,
You
no.
gotta have something on your mind.
Mr. Mayor, now you're on the consent agenda.
Okay, we go to consent agenda, which is a staff consent agenda. I'd like to pull 9A. Anybody like to pull anything else? Okay, 9A,
So move the rest.
pardon me?
Move the rest.
Second.
The other
Yeah,
items.
move the rest of the items.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
Debbie?
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
I pulled 9A because it's almost $500,000. And I was able to talk with Matt Feeney this afternoon, and we have almost 1,200 street lights in the city that we maintain. And this is to replace about 800 or 900 of them with a LED light that will, in 2.5 years, come up with, supposedly, hopefully, it'll cover this $452,000 expense to do this. We have a company that we're paying not to exceed $90,000 to do the replacement. So I hope everybody understands that, and I'm now in favor of it. I make a motion we approve 9A.
Second.
Debbie?
Mayor Steinmeier,
Aye.
Councilman Corey,
Aye.
Councilman Gibson,
Aye.
Councilman Forbes,
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba,
Aye.
Councilman Purdon,
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
Okay, now we have 10A, mangrove discussion, staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'd like Community Development to come forward. Laura Gibson to provide your presentation.
Welcome, thank you for coming.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Councilman Corey, Councilman Carumba, and Arlene for inviting us. We're here to tell you guys a little bit about mangroves, so I hope you're excited. Very quickly, I'm going to pass out a DEP trimming guideline. A lot of information we're going to be discussing is also found in here, DEP being the primary repository for mangrove management. So I pass these out real fast if that's okay. Alrighty, guys. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Sean Gibbons. This is Laura Gibson. We are basically your only two environmental specialists. So anything under the environmental umbrella we handle, from landscaping to dock and shoreline to mangroves to listed species. If it's green, it's Laura and I. Again, we're going to go through a brief presentation. We're going to cover some basic mangrove information to kind of help you guys be more informed, also help you identify mangroves so you can help your citizens and the community by large. If you don't know these things, you have to pull your Florida card, so be ready for that. Here we go. So, mangroves.
Okay, excuse me, but who do you work for?
Community development.
Community development?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, we are your
thank you.
environmental specialists. So in lieu of you having a natural resource department proper or an environmental science department proper, Ms. Laura and I handle the majority of that through community development. Where things will change when we start dealing with the Water Management District, DEP, or state level agencies, which sort of dovetails what we're discussing today for you guys. So again, the picture you guys can see off to the far over here is actually of a mangrove community. All three mangroves are currently present in that. The idea would be if you can identify all three. I'm doubting most of you probably can't, but by the end of this next few slides, you will be able to. The first primary ingredient in our mangrove community is the red mangroves. They're sort of the foundational pillars. Red mangroves in and of themselves are the most common you're going to see in your adventures through the bay and throughout the different communities within Southwest Florida. They're especially prevalent in Bonita Springs. We were actually home to a state-level champion red mangrove on the bay side of Hickory Road, which is very cool. Red mangroves in and of themselves. What was that, Rick? I'm sorry.
What road?
We actually have a state champion red mangrove located on Hickory Boulevard. It's on the bay side, about 200 feet back within the mangrove forest.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So basically, it's one of
It's
the largest
Hickory
in the state.
Boulevard, by the way, it's not
as far as
Hickory
a-
Road.
What was that?
Hickory Boulevard?
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. So actually, it'd be before the break where you have the single-family homes versus the multifamily. It abuts the single-family portion on the other side, the east side of Hickory Boulevard. Red mangroves into themselves are pretty easy to identify based upon their coloring and classification. They have a reddish hue to the trunks, limbs, as well as the roots. They're often the tallest of the mangroves you're going to see in our region. They're nicknamed the walking tree because they appear to be walking around throughout the different mangrove environments, throughout the bay, along shorelines. Again, big key out there is the silt prop root. So if you see a large root jutting out and dropping back down on a mangrove plant, you're looking at a red mangrove. You also have the seed propagules. They're the long, narrow ones. You'll often see those on the beach or if you're out swimming. Those are the ones the kids are throwing at each other. Those are red mangrove propagules. They have a lifespan of about a year, so they can float around for quite some time. The leaf shape itself is very distinctive. It's a larger, waxier, dark green leaf very similar to if you're familiar with the strangler fig or some of our other natural Florida fauna. Again, the reddish hue is the dead giveaway. What's unique about red mangroves, which we'll get to when we talk about trimming, is that they're not allowed to coppice, which essentially means if you cut the primary growing medium, be it a large branch or, God forbid, the trunk, that tree's basically dead. They're not able to grow from their growth tips like that. They're only able to sprout new growth from healthy, growing, finite-style tips. If you deadhead it, if you cut it off, if you line tail it, again, terms we will cover, that's basically, yes, Rick?
Don't you need a permit to do anything? Can't you just leave them alone?
Yes, you do. That's actually what we're getting to. Which is
Hurry
going
up.
to be.
We got all night.
Yeah, no, please, not a problem. So again, those are kind of the most sensitive to trimming or over pruning, which I believe is what Councilman Corey's concerns were regarding at our previous sessions. Black mangrove is very easy to identify. Black trunk, smaller lima bean-shaped seeds. They have pneumatophores, which are the finger-like projections coming up out of the ground. That helps to filter, gather sediment, gather nutrients. They're very good at stabilizing mucky areas. So again, roots that go down underground, shoot back up. Think like cypress knees. Tend to have salt crystals on the bottom of the leaves. So actually, black mangroves are very efficient at processing salt water, more than most of the other mangrove species. They'll essentially crystallize through different salt apparatus where they secrete on the bottom of their leaves. Those are called probagles and pneumatophores. Come on. There we go. White mangroves, again, are the third species. They're the ones that are the least cold tolerant and tend to be located higher up within the mangrove community. They have salt excreting glands similar to black mangroves, and they're actually a distant cousin of a very common landscaping plant known as green buttonwood. Brief description of the mangrove community. Again, they're critical for our ecosystems, so everything from the largest of birds, such as blue herons, to egrets, to common snooks, to sea stars, to bayfish. They're critical items. They're bird rookeries. They're an important part of our estuarine and riverine systems, and one of the major attractors for our location. Why else are mangroves important? Well, there's more than just the environmental significance, which again, my opinion is the most important, being your environmentalist, but they also provide a sense of place for our area and our community. Again, critical fish habitat, rookeries, area for growth for crustaceans, different type of marine mammals, harbor from storms for different passersby as well. I'm going to turn over to Ms. Laura now. We're going to go over some stats with you guys in regards to the city itself's current mangrove populations, locations, densities, and types. And then we're going to break into that pamphlet you have in front of you, which is effectively a Cliff Notes version of the Mangrove Protection Act, regulations city side, regulations county side, regulations state side, and how those are enforced, on kind of what the rules are, and to give you guys some guidance on what can and cannot be trimmed. Ms. Laura?
And who enforces this law? Who enforces the law?
DEP does at this moment in time. The Department of Environmental Protection currently does, but we have our own set of restrictions and guidelines for specific types of permits, like dock and shoreline structures, boat houses, and the like.
Okay, so the aerial here, if you look in the yellow, or if you can see that the yellow outline, that's where we have our mangroves, and that's taken from a GIS data source called the Florida Land Use Cover and Forms Classification System. And this is a widely used GIS data source that's used by the state, that's actually was developed by the state, used by local municipalities, the DEP, as well as the South Florida Water Management District, and also the Army Corps of Engineers, to determine habitat types on a site. And they publish this data every and update it every so many years. The GIS data that we use for this analysis was aerial interpreted. When we get down to a project level, that's ground interpreted, so it's a little tighter, cleaner of interpretation of different habitat types. But for this, it's a good measure to compare where we are over the years. So we took the 1999 data and intersected it with the most recent data that was updated between 2014 and 2016. And for the mangrove swamps in Bonita Springs, we found less than a half acre difference, and it was actually an increase in that. And that is for a variety of reasons, such as the way that the areas were interpreted, just and basic natural coastal and estuarine and other type of habitat recruitment and changes in that, and also a little bit of preservation and a little bit of development, not much in that. And you can see that it extends, and it's mostly Estero Bay and also the Spring Creek and Imperial River estuary. So I want to review with you what the city has in place now currently for protecting mangroves, and compare that with some of the other local municipalities. And I'm going to have to use your presentation because I can't read it. Sorry. Oh, getting old sucks. Okay. Okay, so the city has a few different regulations to protect mangroves. One is the Mangrove Protection Act, or part of our Land Development Code, and that's really dealing with compliance when there has been work done without permits to remove or harm mangroves. And we work with DEP on the restoration and mitigation that will be beneficial, that we can both agree to. Also in our Dock and Shoreline Code, we restrict mangrove removal in a couple of different instances. One, we do not allow removal of mangroves for seawalls without a public hearing variance. Mangroves act as their own shoreline stabilization, so we want to recognize that. Also, docks or structures, other shoreline structures, if there's mangroves along the shoreline in one place but not another, like if there's an unvegetated area or an area of a lot of invasive exotics, we try to work with the applicant to build in that area, like maybe an access walkway out to the dock, instead of tearing through the mangroves, so we can preserve those. And then mangrove swamps are wetlands, so they fall under our wetlands protection regulations, which we really rely heavily upon the state and federal agencies to permit. But having our regulation here helps to assure consistency between our city and state and federal permitting, like that the plans match, that the mitigation has been followed through. And then our tree protection ordinance as well. All native trees are protected. Mangroves are native trees. So in certain instances, you may need a permit or have to follow through with proper pruning practices. And so for Lee County's regulations are very similar to Bonita Springs. They have the mangrove protection article as well, the similar Dock and Shoreline Code regulations protecting mangroves, and defer to DEP for trimming and removals. Collier County is also similar to Bonita Springs. They defer to DEP for trimming and removals, less their special treatment overlay, which is like a zoning overlay for rare and unique ecosystems that is looked at a little more closely during permitting. And Cape Coral defers entirely to DEP for all mangrove requirement or issues and trimming removals. And the City of Sanibel has essentially taken over permitting from DEP. They require, through their Natural Resources Department, inspections before trimming and mitigation for any removal or alteration within the city limits. And then City of Fort Myers has similar dock and shoreline regulations to us in protecting mangroves, and also that requires tree removal permits. And then the state agency has the probably the biggest say in this, and so that's what we passed out to you. And these are the guidelines that are available to all property owners and provide the rights and responsibilities of living with mangroves. So this was developed through the Mangrove Trimming Protection Act, which was approved in 1996, and it's where the Florida legislature recognized both the importance of mangroves and riparian rights of property owners. And the act is both height and location driven in regards to mangrove trimming. So the whole purpose is to protect the mangroves, allow trimming while not while restricting and not permitting, hopefully, alteration that would damage the mangroves entirely. So, and here are some examples of different types of mangrove trimming that can be done. The upper left photo shows a window trimming type of style. So you have the upper canopy, but you can see through the lower part of the canopy to the waterway from that building behind those mangroves. Underneath that, that's a hedge style of trimming. You're allowed to go down to 6 feet for the tree as measured from the substrate. The picture below that shows a combination of both, and you can see a window on the building where you can see directly out to the water. And then the last picture shows a special type of pruning called undercutting, and that is mostly used for boardwalks only, so you don't hit the branches as you're walking through there. Is there anything else? Oh, okay. So there at certain times in certain situations, mostly involving the height and which type, if you require a permit, a professional mangrove trimmer would be required to be used. And on the left side of that slide goes over the statute, the part of the statute in the Mangrove Trimming Protection Act that discusses that, and the licenses or certifications that would be required to be a professional mangrove trimmer, or you can go straight to DEP through one of their classes as well to be certified. So it's certifications like an arborist, and certified environmental professional, certified ecologist, certified professional wetland scientist, licensed landscape architect. So those professions or certifications have been decided that they already have the experience needed to properly trim and prune mangroves. Okay. So,
Excuse me, but is there a limit to this?
I'm sorry?
Is there a limit to this conversation?
Yep, we're almost done.
So, Mr. Mayor, this is a staff report to you that was a previous request from council to give you an update on the city's mangrove policies and regulations, and then afterwards it was lead to discussion as to whether you wanted to implement any changes to the current regulations from council.
So guys, we'll kind of go through these next slides a little bit quicker, and then we can kind of field some questions. Awesome. Go back one. There we go. So in the Mangrove Protection Act, there are certain exemptions provided for homeowners. I think this is where some of the questions from the previous discussion council had arisen from. Homeowners in and of themselves are allowed to maintain and trim their own mangroves under a certain set of pre-existing conditions. The key factor there being that an individual homeowner is not allowed to trim their mangroves at a height above 10 feet or below 6 feet. So that doesn't mean you can trim out that center area. It means that if the mangrove is of a certain height, you are restricted as the homeowner from being allowed to trim it. The reasons being, obviously, if you cause enough significant damage to the tree in and of itself, to its root base, to any of its natural systems, the tree itself will die, defoliate, or cease to function properly in a wetland environment, which we categorize as altering, which would be a DEP violation as well as a violation of our city codes.
And you need a permit to do that.
So you would not need a permit to trim if you were the homeowner, you own the property, and you were trimming a mangrove of a very specific size. So under 10 feet, above 6 feet, you can trim. If it's above 10 feet, you have to have a professional trim for you. You're still exempt, the professional has to do it. If it's above 16 feet, there are additional trimming requirements. If it's above 24 feet, it's basically a no-go. And there's actually a slide that will explain all that to you guys in a split second. Awesome. It's going to be this slide right here. Gives a pretty clean breakdown to kind of help you guys visualize what we're talking about. So if you do not fall into the category of an exemption as the homeowner itself or as a professional mangrove trimmer, you are limited drastically in what you can and cannot do to the mangroves abutting your property. There are additional regs for depth, density, volume of foliage trimmed in terms of square feet. It gets to be rather complex and detailed, but essentially, at the end of the day, if you are not falling within your exemption criteria, you have to contact DEP to seek approval or permitting prior to doing anything. Homes that have an existing mangrove configuration, ones that have historically been trimmed and can be documented as such on file with the department, are able to return any kind of mangrove growth to their original stat, i.e. what was approved under that specific permit, which is why you see properties that have hedged mangroves or windowed mangroves or undercut mangroves. There was a process to establish a zero baseline for that mangrove structure and form, and it's only be allowed to trim back to a certain portion thereof. The other two options that will work for you, if you are not the homeowner and you don't fall under an exemption, is to get what's called a general permit or an individual permit. Ms. Laura already mentioned these briefly, but essentially a general permit allows you to go beyond the scope of your exemptions and would be a requirement if you intend to trim anything that does not fall within those exemptions. You could think of that as clearing the height of a mangrove for a view corridor. Individual permits are used to clear navigation ways. So if there's a waterway that has been inundated with mangrove growth, there's a specific permit and process, i.e. an individual permit, to help to clear that waterway. So similar to when the district or the state comes in to clean out the river or one of the different streams, Spring Creek, for example, there's an individual permit process they go through to do that. The question was also posed as whether or not the city should be considering doing its own permitting, mitigation banking, inspections for removal and trimming of mangroves. The answer is, to a small degree, we already do quite a bit of that. There already is a process in place for affecting shorelines, for adding structures or adapting structures that require mangrove approval and replacement by our individual staff. Again, think of putting in a dock, think of putting in a seawall or riprap. Those permits also are approved by DEP per their standards. Ours as the city can always be more restrictive. They, however, cannot be less. As with anything state or federal level, we do have that option. The challenge with that being is once you have competing jurisdictional requirements or code sections, that offers a fair amount of confusion for contractors, homeowners, elected officials, even staff sometimes. It's better when you tend to have a blanket statement or a singular entity regulating removal and management of mangroves, especially when you consider the majority of the work being done is in lands of the state or sovereign waters. Again, out of the city's jurisdiction in that true sense. The question was also raised as to whether or not we have the ability, location, area, or option to do additional mangrove banking in terms of a mitigation bank, plantings, or installations. While certain communities, Sanibel is a great example, Naples is currently pursuing that as an option, do have access to a lot of publicly owned land owned by the various municipalities, as well as access points, and a resource department capable of managing and maintaining mitigation banks. So once you request from DEP to do your own thing, or consider to be your own mitigation bank, or perform your own permitting solely in and of yourself, that puts you out on a limb to have to handle all of that. The challenge we face in the city of Bonita Springs is the majority of the well-groomed, well-taken care of, appropriate, natural, whatever you want to call it, mangrove area. The highly valued stuff is either privately owned, which we would not have access to, is currently already under conservation or preserve easement with either the district, DEP, the county, or the state, or is not within our jurisdiction. Think of the beach accesses, for example, or the beach in of itself. That's actually more of Lee County's purview, not necessarily the city of Bonita Springs. So there's a very limited area in which we could establish and set up a mitigation bank to manage. Staff, in discussing options amongst ourselves and with our DEP counterparts, decided that probably would be a more appropriate avenue for staff, which was mentioned at the previous council meeting when we discussed this, to consider lobbying and pushing for additional support and regulations from DEP from the top down, providing better cross-access and data sharing. Perfect example would be the graphs Ms. Laura had showed you. We wouldn't have access to that kind of information if it wasn't for the state. If we can get updated GIS and CAD files, we can do a better job in terms of staff, but also at the state level for doing any kind of mangrove appraisals, regulations, providing additional information to you as council members. There are significant limitations that are placed on us, again, in terms of location, size, scope, staffing, and funding to operate our own mitigation bank, which should all be significant considerations. It's kind of the where question mark that you'd be looking at if you were to consider doing that. I think one of the big things we could do would be to express interest to Lee County and the state to maybe include Bonita properties that are either under private or city ownership for conservation lands. That's a great way to help encourage different property owners or applicants when they come to our office or speak to you as council members to consider putting their property up for election adoption as a Conservation 2020 land or a state land acquisition to preserve that land in perpetuity. Some of the best mangrove areas we have in the city are already those. In addition, I think one of the biggest things we could do, and it's kind of my bread and butter and a big crux for me, is provide better public outreach and education. So again, many of you, I believe Councilman Forbes, I know Miss Amy has, I believe Mr. Hutchinson has back here as well, have attended a different seminar for property association managers at the Wonder Gardens, where Laura and myself, as well as other members of the community and professionals, provide a pretty in-depth 4-day seminar about rules, regs, and processes. It also provides an opportunity for individuals to approach the questions or concerns in sometimes a less formal manner. Those opportunities are humongous. I think it'd be a fantastic opportunity for our tree board to consider doing potentially to provide education and outreach as well. But I really feel like the more you know and the more information provided, the more informed citizens are to make decisions, and the less likely we are to have any kind of confluences or concerns where mangroves are being trimmed illegally or, God forbid, defoliated, having prop roots cut, dying. They will know the appropriate entity to go for approvals and know the process to do it with. I doubt, again, before this presentation we just gave, most of you knew there was a mangrove handbook and exemptions for homeowners. Obviously, Mayor Steinmeier has kind of dealt with this in the past with previous issues, but there's a whole process and regulatory system set up to address that, and it exists, and it does a very good job. Staff has a very good relationship with DEP. They're a tremendous resource for us and vice versa. That being said, we'd be happy to go through any of the slides with you guys, revisit some of the material, answer any additional questions. Again, the slide was really more to be kind of an outline to show what we're going to be discussing. But if you guys have questions or concerns, we'd be happy to discuss with you at this point in time. If you want to get a hold of us offline or have any concerns, we'd be happy to discuss with you guys what options are available and who best to address any kind of mangrove permitting questions you or your constituents may have.
Chris?
I want to thank you for your presentation. It cleared up a lot of questions in my mind. I do know that it does seem that there's a lot of mitigation banking going on Sanibel.
Yes, sir.
With respect to mangrove trimming that has to get DEP approval, or that there has to be some sort of mitigation banking. And
Correct.
It seems like Sanibel is always in the receipt of the banking side of that. So I was curious about why it always has to be somewhere outside of our city limits, but now I have a better understanding of that. And I would support what you were talking about in terms of ways to improve the public education and outreach programs and those matters, because I do think protecting our mangroves is essential to protecting the environment.
Oh, it's critical. I mean, environment, economy, and everything. And again, thank you for the opportunity. You're 100% correct in Sanibel. It's just the geography of it and the location provided them a little more opportunity than us, unfortunately. But they are both a mitigation area. So, for example, you can do work and mitigate with them, but they're also a designee. So basically, they've taken DEP steps one branch further, if you will, to kind of have some additional regulations because they are basically wrapped entirely in environmentally critical coastal and riparian areas.
Yes, in the last 20 years, has anybody been fined for cutting their mangroves in the city of Bonita Springs?
Yes, both through DEP as well as through our code enforcement process. We tend to allow DEP to handle the majority of those regulations, being as though they are state first and city second in that regard. We also have an opportunity with city permits to essentially hold a permit or not issue it, or combine a permit to correct for any illegal trimming, removals, or actions. So you have a litany of ways to both take action against them in terms of enforcement, i.e. DEP taking a state level case, us taking our own individual case, us essentially we could even potentially need to cite them to court if it came to that. There are also civil fines associated with that, both at the city and DEP level. So to answer your question, yes, there has been. For the most part, we try to give the education opportunity and try to help DEP give some opportunities for appropriate either mitigation steps to address those concerns or provide the oversight for replanting. So our wetland protection ordinance or our tree protection ordinance, for example, could require a 3-to-1 planting replacement for a mangrove that is illegally removed or trimmed. Similarly, our mangrove protection ordinance basically doubles down the DEP regs, saying by reference those are our regs. So there's a lot of overlap. Where we do start to see concerns when you have redundant agencies providing similar reviews, similar mitigation requirements, similar regulations, and similar penalties. That tends to be a bit overly redundant, tend to bog down the process, which is why, again, we as staff are very comfortable with the position we have DEP in terms of regulating most mangrove-oriented actions, be it trimming, be it removal. The other option would be an ERP through the Water Management District, which effectively is in the same building as DEP. It's the same organization in a roundabout way. So they're going to be aware of that, and there's a separate process through which they themselves are a designee and can address any kind of mitigation concerns or development requirements. And that's the entity that we tend to deal with when we talk about building and developing. It's more the district than DEP at that point in time.
So basically, if you want to touch a mangrove, you better get a permit?
Yeah, or just give me a call. I'd love to walk you through it.
Because the people
Essentially, yes,
listen
sir.
to this that have the mangroves say, oh, I can do this, I can do that, because the guy said I could do that.
Correct.
And I don't think he said that.
No, and I think probably part of the reason too is that I think some of the logic maybe inadvertently behind why this information is harder to find is you don't want to give people the blessing to go ahead and start cutting down mangroves unless they know what they're doing. It's always staff's recommendation, regardless of what it might be, even if it's something that Laura and I could approve unilaterally or walk you through, to always contact DEP and get them informed. And if possible, to always make sure you have a professional mangrove trimmer. Even if you're within your exemption territory, it's best to use a professional. They know what they're doing. And then they share some skin in the game, Lord forbid something were to go wrong. So you're not out on an island by yourself.
Question?
Mayor?
I just would like to say thank you, Sean and Laura. I learned like a lot. I didn't know there were 3 different types of mangroves. Hopefully they're not having a quiz, but red, black, and white.
Yes, ma'am, yes. So, yep, and they would go in that order of succession as well.
And Brazilian peppers, they're like very aggressive and nasty.
They're very gnarly. They're actually probably our top #1 most wanted for invasive exotics. Actually, there's a portion in the book as well that talks about that. You'll see those intermingled along the riparian edges and throughout mangrove systems sometimes. The problem is they're so hardy and so good at what they do, they just outcompete native vegetation. So again, that would be an area where you might want to have a dock pop through as opposed to take out a mangrove. We take out an exotic, or we help you to remove that and replace it with natural vegetation.
Question. I just wanted to say you guys were very thorough. It was very, I think it's educational, and I mean, the importance of mangroves is something that's kind of, it's an undervalued tree in regards to the overall ecosystem down here. So I'm glad that you guys are on it to the level that you are, and keep it up. Thank you.
Question?
I just have a few, I'm sorry, are you recognizing me?
Yes.
I appreciate the presentation, and I think you did answer several questions that were raised when we first approached this issue. I think, is it correct to say that judging from the 2 comparisons of the graph, the GIS thing, that we really have a stable mangrove system within Bonita Springs? Is that a fair statement to say?
Yes, and I wouldn't say that we're better than anybody else, but I think we've been blessed in this city to have amazing leadership and a very strong environmental presence throughout the years, and we've done, I think, a very good job policing that. But a big hat tip goes to DEP. Us being the southern portion of Estero Bay, and with the different challenges that we have ecologically in terms of flushing and other issues, they do a very good job monitoring this area as well.
But that's why you feel comfortable maintaining that responsibility with the DEP and not, I don't believe you're advocating for Bonita Springs to take over their own regulation of that, isn't that?
No, ma'am. Based upon the data we have, the
Right.
metrics we've pulled, I think it would be appropriate to leave it in the hands of, I don't want to say the professionals and devalue Laura and myself, but they do it at a level, at a state level, with regulations that tend to have a bit more strength and emphasis than we do at times, and I am very much in support of that.
And at the end of your presentation, you expressed various recommendations where we could be more active in requesting the state to help you to do your job. Could Could you just put those in writing because I couldn't see it from afar, and you spoke so quickly I didn't take notes, so if you just provide it for that. And I would just like to say that this council person, and I'm sure the others, are committed to maintaining our mangrove system and providing that environmental protection to our shoreline, and that we should continue that process. And if there's any reason to feel that we're not doing that, I would ask that you come forward to us and ask us to help you through more regulation.
We will be the first ones beating down the door. Thank you, guys. Like I said, if you get a chance to look in that pamphlet, on the back page is a ton of great web links for resources. There's also, if you really love it, an hour and 7-minute long video actually given by the mangrove coordinator, Daniel Sensi, a good friend of ours, who goes over all of this in very minute, finite detail to really kind of help you guys hammer it home. I cannot encourage you to take a look at it. You're going to see a lot of repeat things, but again, it's a great exercise to do if you have a few minutes.
Question. If you see or file a complaint with DEP about somebody illegally cutting or clearing mangroves, how quick do they get here?
So it depends on who receives the notice first. If we were to receive it, Laura and myself would obviously go out immediately, as well as probably bring code enforcement to do a stop work order to cease the action. Generally by that point in time, if not that day, the next DEP would tend to show up to take some baseline photography to understand what has happened, what's changed, and then ultimately we would rely on them for enforcement action unless we have additional concerns.
Thank you. Very, very good presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, is DEP a county or a state outfit?
That's a state agency, and we do have a local branch of there. We are in the South District, and their offices are in Fort Myers, downtown Fort Myers. And as part of my analysis with this, I did review all environmental resource permits in the city along the waterways looking for mangrove violations, and I was impressed with how many compliance that issues, not that there were those, but the follow-up that they are doing, and they have the resources that we don't, like they have boats, and they are in the area quite a bit, monitoring the mangroves and noticing any removals, and they have a few more resources than we do, like with historical aerials and different kind of images that they can compare historically to see if there are changes, and so I was impressed with the follow-up that they are giving on that.
Do we have any more questions from council? Well, I appreciate I love trees. I used to work for a forester. So this is very complicated. Only government could make it so complicated, but we gotta help the people. We work for the people, and if people can make their property more livable for them, that's fine, without killing the trees. It's a fine line, and I appreciate your presentation, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving right along here. Okay, now we have Chris and Amy, Chris Corey and Amy Caramba on the Big Carlos Bridge, Pass Bridge. This goes back a few years. They had a public forum up in Fort Myers Beach, and Amy was there, and I happened to be there because I was curious. And my opinion was that their decision was made, even though they put on all these different demonstrations, that they were going to have this 65-foot high bridge for 75 years, and it cost so much for 75 years. Well, 75 years ago, we were fighting World War II. I mean, you can't predict 75 years out. 2 years later, the drawbridge that's there is still working. Putting the 65-foot high bridge in there, you're going to let the shrimp boats in or something. I'm afraid they want to dredge the Estero Bay and have big boats and turn it into an intercontinental waterway like they have in Miami. That's what I'm afraid of.
Mr. Mayor, I believe maybe Councilman Corey would like to introduce his item.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Chris.
No problem. what brought this up was I think Arlene passed out a notice from Lee County Department of Transportation that they're going to hold a public hearing on the project development and environment study on the Big Carlos Pass Bridge on January 28th. I echo the mayor's concern about the bridge. I think we probably all got an email this afternoon from John Pano, which I thought did a very good job in terms of describing the potential impact on Estero Bay with respect to larger boats coming in south of Fort Myers Beach, on the south end of Fort Myers Beach, on the ecology of Estero Bay. But I'm also concerned about the impact of increased traffic coming south across that bridge. It's a 4-lane bridge they're looking to build, and I think that part of the reasons they want to build it is to have a faster way, coupled with the completion of the rehabilitation of Estero Boulevard on Fort Myers Beach, a faster way for a lot of vehicles to move south through Hickory Boulevard, Bonita Beach Road, to get out to I-75. I know there's a number of people on Fort Myers Beach that are in opposition to this bridge. There's no record that any commitment has been made by the county with respect to handling additional traffic coming through Bonita Springs. There's been no commitment of funding for, say, improvements to Bonita Beach Road and the US 41 intersection, or any commitment as to how they would hope to handle increased traffic on Hickory Boulevard, which is already problematic during season and a lot of other times during the year. So I'm concerned about both the environmental impact on Estero Bay. I'm concerned about the increase in the traffic coming south through Bonita Springs to get out to I-75, and I question some of the financial analysis that's been done to support the idea that the construction of a 65-foot bridge is a better solution than simply repair and rehabbing the drawbridge that we have now. I thought that I would pass out, just as a point of reference, a bridge that I'm familiar with because for a lot of years friends and family vacationed in Isle of Palm, South Carolina. And while it's not a drawbridge, the Ben Sawyer Bridge just north of downtown Charleston is a swing bridge. That swing bridge was built in 1945, started in 1941, but because of the needs for steel during the World War II, it got delayed until 1945 for completion. That bridge operated very well until a major rehabilitation project took place in 2010. So for the better part of 65 years, it's operated well. They did about a $30 million rehabilitation project on that, and contacting those people, they anticipate that rehabilitation project will serve the needs, will enable that bridge to have about a 50-year longer useful life. What has been proposed or set forth in the set of slides that are attached to the green sheet is an assertion by the consultants being used by Lee County that the bridge will have to be replaced in 20 years even if they repair it. I think several on this council know Jim Worcester, who has worked with MPO and has done a lot of work with the city. Jim and I talked about this. He thinks it's a ludicrous proposal that we can gain many years of life out of the present bridge by simply undergoing a scouring of the bridge supports and piers and a rehabilitation of the drawbridge bridge function itself. And I think that's certainly something that should be pursued. In addition, Jim has indicated that there are ways that we can add additional width to the sidewalks and provide a bike trail across that bridge that would suit the needs of a lot of people who want to walk across that path or want to ride their bicycles as part of the proposed Sun Trail down through Bonita Springs. So I asked Arlene did me a favor and pulled out the previous council minutes, the previous letters written by the mayor, Peter Simmons. Also included in here was a letter from the mayor of Fort Myers Beach at the time. And I just wanted to refresh council's memory on previous discussions about Big Carlos, the bridge at Big Carlos, and to see if we should once again take similar actions or refresh the actions of that we've taken in the past that I think would serve to lessen the harm that this project would cause to Bonita Springs. And I know Amy was involved with this before, and so I'll pass the baton over to her and ask her to make any comments because she was on the front line of this prior to my being elected to council. So, Amy?
Well, as so many things that come before us, these things are complicated. And as you can see from the record that I left with both analysis and discussions with the Lee County Commissioners, I was very much against the 65-foot bridge for a variety of reasons, not only the ones that you mentioned. I also questioned the cost analysis that was done, which I thought was irregular, but the professionals did not agree with me. As I recall from that public hearing process, when they gave multiple alternatives that the DOT had to select two alternatives to take to the second level, the design or the concept design that was shown for the what they call the no-builder alternative was really bad, I have to say, both visually and functionally. At the time, we were never given any alternative to that, and now we are left with two alternatives, a 65-foot bridge and a no-builder alternative. So I'm not sure that those are the choices, that we should be having at this point, because I wasn't in favor of the no-builder alternative because of the limitations that they presented at that meeting. I also have some concern because it's, from what I understand, and maybe Matt can help us to refresh the process here, that I think it's too late to reverse where they're going. And I kind of agree that I think the decision, for whatever reason, had been made before, because we didn't get much responsiveness to the complaints or the concerns that were raised by various entities. So I'm not 100% sure whether this is a fruitful way for the council to go forward to try to reverse this, because there's so many things that we're working on at this time with Lee County and other entities, and even the Department of Transportation, that we're going to need cooperation with. And just to make a statement, I mean, we could make the statement, we could just present the same materials that we already brought to them, but I don't think it would be very fruitful. But if we don't try, of course it will be fruitful. So I don't know what anyone else thinks about this. I haven't changed my mind. I think that going to the 65 alternative is not the correct thing for Bonita Springs. But that decision, I think, has already been made, and I'm not 100% sure we could reverse it. So I think what the council should at least consider, what we could gain by going forward with an appeal and what we could lose.
No, thank you, Amy. Anybody else?
And I'd actually, I concur with Amy. We need to choose our battles, and this is not one we're going to win. And I think
Well,
it would be spinning
okay, I
wheels.
agree with you there, that we're not going to win this battle. I didn't think we could win it 2 years ago when we were at this public forum, and basically they said, we're going to build this 65-foot high bridge. They have one on the other end of the island where the shrimp boats come in. And I don't see them in the Estero Bay where you got 3 feet of water on high tide and all this fish and stuff. And the environmentalists would go nuts if they do that. But as a local guy who lives on Hickory Boulevard, I got 50,000 people coming from Fort Myers Beach coming down Hickory Boulevard today. I was told a year or so ago that the county's going to widen all those bridges, Little Carlos and Big Hickory Pass, so they can 4-lane Hickory Boulevard. Now, it might not be in my lifetime, and I'll fight it every stitch of the way, because the most expensive houses in Lee County are on a Hickory Boulevard, bar none. 6 of the top 10 high-priced houses were on Hickory Boulevard. Now, I'm prejudiced because I walk Hickory Boulevard 5-6 days a week picking up trash and cigarette butts. Now, if I quit doing that, well, maybe we'll get the value, I don't think the value would stay up like it is. But, yes, Jesse.
Okay. I feel that whether the decision is made or not, we at least need to be on the record, and I think we can do that similar to how you did it in 2018, non-adversarially, but I think we do need to be on the record because the option of the 65 is completely unacceptable to the direction that I'd like to go as a city, or really to the direction that I've heard from many of the people that I've spoken to. I didn't realize the drawbridge was off the table. So, I mean, my thought was, I haven't, your concerns with the no build, to me, I didn't see I don't remember what the negatives were for you, but my thought process is I'd rather have a no build that we weren't happy with than a 65 monstrosity that we didn't want. And that for me is just, not even from a traffic standpoint or a financial standpoint, but for me it's from an environmental standpoint, like that, because the mangroves, as we just heard about, are so important, and now we're going to increase traffic in the backwaters. To me, the backwaters and the mangroves, personally, I paddleboard, I kayak. There's not a lot of places I can turn this off. That's one of the very few places I can, and I enjoy it. I don't, like I said, even if it doesn't make a difference, I think we as a city need to be on the record. I don't care about the prices of the houses. For me, it's not anything about the price of the houses. I don't care if the poorest people in the city live there. My issue is more directed towards the environmental components, the direction we want as a city with traffic influx, and then the potential environmental hazards or necessary mitigation that might transpire as a result of increased traffic back there. So I would say that we should go on the record with a letter, and if the drawbridge is completely out, I mean, if we have to pick, I'd say no, the no build option, but if at the minimum we need to say we are not happy with the idea of the 65, whether they want to or not. And then I think we need to reach out to Commissioner Sandelli, because we have the first Bonita commissioner that the Lee County Commission's ever had. He wasn't here back then, and you know, I talk to him often, but I haven't even heard his take on this. So maybe he agrees with us, and if he does, maybe there's, you know, maybe it's not dead. I don't want to put him on the spot, but I think we need to explore it, and I think we at least need to be on the record against it.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. I have another comment that, what the heck was it? Well, if that drawbridge is still working, I mean, they can repair that for 20 years. In 20 years, I don't think I'm going to be in Bonita much longer. Be here in 20 years. 75 years, I know I'm not going to be here. The biggest thing that they have in their favor is the 3-foot walkways on the bridge. Now, ADA, you need a bigger sidewalk. Now, what we did on 41 is we found out we could expand without building a new bridge. We could put a walkway possibly attached to the current bridge that's there. But I have to agree with them that, and I even said this, maybe I got this thing started years ago, because the people come down the bike path on Hickory, then they get to Big Hickory Pass, and there's a 1.5 foot wide, and I said, how do you get across that bridge? You know, and there's guardrails, you can't get to the 2-foot thing. So I said, years ago, I said, well, how are they supposed to get across that bridge? So that is a positive in their favor. But 65 feet, you're going to, I don't know, we're going to have a big fight over taking care of the mangroves. I think it's worth fighting for. This is what makes Bonita right. With the kayaks and the local, I don't need 65 feet. If they want to go with the low rise, as Amy suggests, I think that'd be fine. The 65 foot puts the Lover's Key people got to go a couple 100 feet down to get on the road.
Well, one thing,
Yes.
because using the 65-foot footprint, they had to move the bridge apex towards Bonita. I don't know how many, I think 100 feet. So rather than extending it equally on the Fort Myers side and the Bonita Springs side, they just shifted the whole bridge.
Why?
Because there was so much development on the Fort Myers side, they'd have to take all the property. So, and it does impinge on Lover's Key, because that's where the
That's for sure.
I don't know what you call it, the toe of that bridge goes in there. So that was another reason why I was not in favor. I mean, I made my piece. I sent letters. I did all that stuff. So I've been through all the analysis and went to a lot of the things. So I'm not in favor of the 65-foot bridge. I just think it might be hopeless. I'm not against sending some kind of a, you know, I don't know what it is, some feel-good kind of letter. Maybe it'll mean, I think we should talk to Ray Sandelli. I did speak with him about a different matter recently, and he's very receptive to anything that we need. But I'm not in favor of the build option as currently designed. So it would have to be improved upon a lot. And if we want to say that you know, we should have the extension so we could have the 3-foot walkways. I think they might have purposely made it look really horribly ugly, because you wouldn't want to look at that, you know.
Yes, Amy, if they move the apex, then the river doesn't necessarily move.
Right, they were going to
They're going to have to dig it up.
They'd have to dig it up. That's true.
I don't know. I'm going to fight a tooth and nail. There's a low rise or no rise.
Well,
that's my opinion, but that's I'm only one vote.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think if we're going to, I think it's a fight worth fighting. I think, Estero Bay is important to all of us, and it's important to our economy. And I think Lover's Key is probably one of the best attended state parks in the state of Florida.
Number one.
And I know that the 65-foot bridge, for example, because of its height and because of the apex, the run out to come back to Estero Boulevard on Fort Myers Beach and to Hickory Boulevard south of the bridge has to be an additional 500 feet to allow for a run out off the apex down to road level. That takes up a lot of property. But I think the way that we can do this is to team up with Fort Myers Beach and to, I mean, we're the two cities most impacted by the proposed construction of this. And it would seem like if we could join hands and have a united voice about this project with Lee County, work with Ray Sandelli, that it's at least a fight we're fighting for environmental reasons and for traffic reasons with traffic coming into Bonita Springs. And I would just like to get a sense of the council, you know, to at least as a first step, to have a discussion with Fort Myers Beach and just get a feeling for where they're at.
Okay.
I'm willing to do that.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would say this. I think not only do we want to parlay with Fort Myers Beach, but get with the state park because it impacts them. And then whatever we come up with, it should not be a in your face. If if we present the facts to them and they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. And we do have a relationship with them that's, I think, on the upswing, not the downswing.
Okay.
But I think there is strength in numbers, and if you can get Fort Myers Beach to agree to it and Lover's Key to also,
Mr. Mayor.
would be a good thing.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I absolutely agree with what Fred just said because there's power in numbers. But I mean, I think logistically, we need to think about this as we need to delay and extend this because that's going to give us ample time to get more firepower. And yes, they might be mad for a minute, but at the end of the day, I would rather they be a little upset than we just roll over because the city was not going to be pleased. And our duty is to them first. So we fight and we lose, at least we fought. But I think one of the first things we need to do is we need to consider how we get this to punt a little bit so we can buy a little extra time to get more people on our side, and then we can kind of see where the commission's at and then kind of go from there. But
Okay.
logistically, how do we punt, Rooney?
Jesse,
Yeah,
what is the benefit to the city of Bonita Springs?
It is
Is
not
there
a
any benefit to the city of Bonita Springs?
exactly no. No, that's what I'm trying
So I think we should say no.
I
As
think-
much as say no as we can.
That's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
And I'm sorry, but when we incorporated, before we incorporated, it was loud and clear from the people of Bonita Springs. We did not want to be another Fort Myers
I agree
Beach
with you. I agree with you.
or a
100,
Miami.
I 100% agree with you.
So-
What I'm saying is I'm trying to mount the best defense to ensure that they can't do that. And what I'm saying is what Fred Forbes just said, by getting other municipalities and the state park involved and then approaching them as a unit, we at least have a chance and we at least mounted a fight. I'm not saying it's successful, but honestly, I really don't think us having an issue with this as a city is in any way, shape, or form going to affect our relationship with the city or with the county commission. They know that if they would expect, they know me, they would expect from me, I would at least say something if it's about Bonita. And I know there's a number of you that they would think the same. So I'm not worried about the relationship. I'm worried about us just rolling over. So take a swing at them, but I think we need to do it in unison with other people, and I think we need to punt to give ourselves more time so we have a more strategic defense going in. So my question is for Derek Rooney, how do we logistically do that?
I mean, one of the closest corollary to this would be the PD&E study that was going on for the intersection of Bonita Beach Road.
41.
Now, in that particular situation, that was a state level project that was going through, we hadn't even reached the PD&E stage, but that was looking for flow through the MPO. This is Lee County on its own initiative, so it's not part of a broader state program where there are state dollars at play. So really, we're beyond the point we were with Bonita Beach Road study. The study's actually done, and all the authority on this lies with Lee County. So, you know, that may make it better because it's purely up to the commission and it doesn't affect the other projects or other people's who are waiting in queue, but it's certainly something that's been budgeted and moved very far forward by the county. So, you know, what your solution is really a political solution. It's requesting the county commission pump the brakes on this or look at other options.
City Attorney, do we have any financial responsibility? So this is going to be landing in the city of Bonita Springs.
Mayor and council, previously, what you did is you appointed Councilmember Carumba, you appointed one liaison to sort of be our staff person to work through. Of course, each of you individually can contact the representatives of the county commission, but if you as a council want to give staff a point person to reach out to Lee County staff to have some appointments or meetings or conference calls, and then additionally, if you're directing us to reach out to Fort Myers Beach, having that same person to have a one point of contact.
I nominate Amy.
Look at me. I
nominate Amy.
I do have I'm not just concerned about the county. I'm willing.
I agree with Jesse. Yes.
I'm not just concerned about the county commissioners. I'm concerned about the DOT and the personnel there because we do have the quadrant plan that we're working, and they've been very cooperative with us. And we also have another project that I'm interested in that is just in the PD&E, and that's Old 41 reconstruction. So I think we should tread carefully. I'm not 100% sure whether, and we won't know until we ask whether Lover's Key would want to be involved with this because they too are very dependent on Lee County and the state. I do believe that there's something besides county money that would be going into that because they'll be applying for support from, I guess, the federal government for this transportation or something like that. So it's a lot more complicated than what we're saying. I'll be willing to be the point person, and I'd like to have our staff help me to do this in a very judicious way, let me put it that way. And I rely on Arlene that always knows how to say things in a way that is not a little improved over my frankness, which is usually my approach.
Would it be possible that you and the staff could make contact with Fort Myers Beach and the park and be able to tell us what you found out about support before the next meeting?
It all depends on whether we can make contact.
Bring this back at the next meeting? Because that's before the 28th, right?
Because the 28th is the public hearing, so we need to have some kind of a feedback before that.
Well, we have another meeting before the public.
Correct.
Right. Staff could give an update with Councilmember Carumba at the next meeting as to the outreach to the city of Fort Myers Beach and the park, and also outreach to Commissioner Sandelli and the county staff.
Very, very good. Do we need a vote on this, or?
No, I think we have direction. Staff has direction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Amy. Okay, building codes. Is this guy still here? 12A?
Mr. Mayor, could I make a request for a short break?
Sure, it's a good time. 10 minutes?
We're having a break?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Item 12.
Building codes, 12A.
Are we back on? So this is a second reading and public hearing for the following ordinance.
Have anything to say about it? We make a vote, or do we have to vote on this?
We do. We have to. I'll read the title of the ordinance into the record.
And public comment?
And you have to have public comment. But this is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, amending a Bonita Springs Code, Chapter 10, Article 2, Building Codes and Standards, Section 10-2, 10-20, to update wind speeds and windborne debris region that coincides with the figures of the 1606 Florida Building Code, providing for severability, conflicts, codification, scrivener's errors, and providing for an effective date.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Debbie, please.
I don't think we had any public.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye. 13, City Attorney's Report. Do you have anything for us tonight?
I have no items.
Well, thank you very much.
Sorry, Pete.
That's your best report ever, Rooney.
All right, now 14A is City Manager's Report. I know she has something
Yes,
for us.
good evening, Mayor and Council. We have before you the City Council appointments to various boards and committees. Our city clerk has reflected in the attachment the interest of everyone of the boards that they currently have and the ones they wish to receive, if possible. So, if you'd like, we could go through the chart, or we could have you discuss amongst yourself which ones you prefer to keep or retain or to.
Yes, I'd like to have the Tree Advisory and Historic Preservation, Lee County and Collier County. That leaves the Streetlight Committee unattended. I think everything else has been covered.
Well, currently, I'm sitting on the Historic Preservation Board, and would it be something that we could work out together since I have a relationship with them? And you could be the alternative. If I can't make a meeting, you could go.
And that's not satisfactory to me, since I've been in town for 70 years. I have a long history with the city.
It's a specific board. Unfortunately, one of our best members, Alicia, she's getting busier and busier, and she might leave. And I made a commitment to do this, and others, they're kind of depending on me. So I'd like to stay on, and we'd be alternative. And you go one week, I go another month, but.
Could you both go?
Correct.
Could you just notice their meetings?
Correct. If you would both like to be the liaisons, we can notice the meeting as such that there would be two liaisons. We've previously done that with other committees.
We can have two at one time?
You can. We just advertise the meeting as such that there would be more than one member of a council member there.
Would that be acceptable?
Well, I'll talk to them. I mean, you can take over. I mean, it's easier.
I mean, you seem to I've been active with the Historical Society before. I mean, the preservation. I'm also the mayor of survey with the Historical Society. I've got a long background with the historic property in Bonita Springs.
He's been designated historic. Maybe we'll start with two, and then see how that works out.
Yeah, that's a compromise for me. Is that all right with you?
Of course, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I also like the Tree Advisory Board.
Currently, that's Councilmember Forbes.
Yes.
I don't have any problem with that at all. I'd like, occasionally I want to come and present something, but I can tell Derek and he can notice the meeting, but I don't need to be there because I got a lot of things going on.
We could have you be an alternate if you like.
Sure. Whenever I'm going to come, I'll let
Correct. Let
Derek
Jane
know, and he can let Rick know, but it's not going to be very often.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, are you requesting to stay on the Street Light Advisory Board?
No. Street light, no, I don't need that, thanks. I got the Lee County and the Collier County, which Mayor Simmons has. If that's all right with anybody, everybody, do we need a vote or anything?
So we would need a liaison to the streetlight committee.
Anybody want to do that?
I'll take it up.
There you go. Thank you.
Are there any other members who wish to recommend changes, or is everyone happy with their existing slat?
Well, I would like to at least be listed as an alternate to the events committee, because I've done that kind of thing in other organizations, and I think I could make an impact. And I do think once we get through this pandemic, we need to actually increase activities to get people back to normal. I think it could be a good building experience for everybody, and we all participate.
Yeah, no, I agree with Fred there. That's the heartbeat of downtown.
It's the way we can get back to normal.
Yes, Aunt.
Yes, I would like Florida League of Cities that Mayor Simmons used to have, because you have to travel and.
You be my guest.
Okay.
And I'm the
It's all right with
alternate
everybody.
on that.
And then Councilmember Carr is the alternate.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it.
Any other changes?
So
Well-
you're going to be, Mayor Steinmeier is the historic, and I'm the alternate. Fred is the alternate to the tree.
To what?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
I think on Florida League of Cities, what happens is a lot of us are members of committees like policy committees, and so we may see you at the meetings anyway. And but then the mayor would be the #1 voting member on committees or boards where the mayor is represented. He's got an opportunity to get on the mayor's council of the Lake City too, which is a good thing, big thing.
So the mayor is aware of this?
I think he is. If he isn't, he is now, because I just said it.
We had previously advised the mayor, staff advised the mayor that Councilmember Forbes is on the Southwest Florida League, and he's slated to move up to president this coming.
Right. That's a separate organization. It's a chapter that represents Bonita Springs, all the cities in Lee County, all the cities in Collier County, and then Punta Gorda from Charlotte County, and LaBelle from the, I forget what county they're in. But anyway,
Okay,
yeah.
is you and Jesse gonna take care of that?
No, well, you only have one voting member, and I'm it.
That's fine. He can have it.
Yeah, they're different. He's on the Southwest. You wanted to do the Florida one, the bigger one.
So yeah, I'm League of Cities that is for the state.
Yeah, I was on it, and Simmons was on it, so you'll take Simmons' spot.
Perfect. Cool.
So Debbie, you'll organize it all for us and tell us.
Yeah.
City Clerk, is there any additional ones that we did not cover that had a vacancy, please?
I believe that they're all, Florida League of Cities would be Jesse, Collier County, the Rick Mayor, Board of Commissioners Mayor, and the Streetlight is gonna be Fred now, so I think we're all taken care of.
I thought that was Chris Corey. Streetlight is Chris Corey.
Streetlight is Chris Corey, okay.
Yeah, I volunteered, I don't know why.
To move things.
The city clerk will update this and will recirculate via email.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
The next item.
14B?
Yes, sir. The next item we have is that staff received a request from Dr. Parsons and Dr. Duke and Dr. Severisi about a letter of request for collaborating on a grant proposal to the National Science Foundation's Sustainable Regional Systems Research Networks program. And we understand this is not a program that the city is looking for any grant funds or applying to, so we would not be in conflict. I understand it's a regional approach to water sustainability, flood mitigation, and it does have a component of socioeconomic level of as well that they would be in research. It's 3 phases, and I understand this is phase 1, and if they receive funding, they would then move to phase 2, which is a planning effort, and upon that, they would compete for one of 2 universities in the country to have funds to implement those planning actions. And they were looking for a letter of support from the city that we would be part of the collaboration process.
I'm not in favor of it at all, because we have enough people dumping money into their water. What's been accomplished with all those thousands and thousands of dollars we've spent studying this water? I don't think we need anybody else. We already have $180,000 a year going out to study this water in our area. I think we don't need another group. Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, I'd like to know what social equity means and who gets to define social equity, but I would be in favor of supporting the letter. It's a grant that they receive. It's not a burden on us particularly, correct? And
they're not asking for any financial commitment from the city.
Right, and we get the information that comes back that can only help. So, again, but social equity defined by whom? Okay, that's all my thing.
I would imagine the federal
So
government.
I have a motion, I say write it, support it.
Second.
Yeah, I too had a question of what social equity actually meant. And also in the sample letter, it said that by us signing it, we agree to undertake tasks associated with the project description of the proposal. So what are they asking us to do?
What they explained, I let Matt go into further detail, but it was a participation in the workshops and focus groups and intellectual knowledge, but I'll let him.
From what it sounded like, it's to assemble entities, like cities, municipalities, not just us, water management district, agriculture, members from agriculture, to talk about or to identify what the challenges are on kind of all things water, like flooding, water quality, and then water withdrawal for like even drinking water, like water supply. So it was to try and kind of create some kind of group through workshops and public input to nail down what those issues are that I think would lead to the second grant Arlene was talking about, which sounds like it's exceptionally competitive. But if they were to receive that, it would be to study those issues for years into the future, kind of as a collective, with maybe the university being the lead on the research. I think they're still working on what that would be, but this part was definitely about forming stakeholder groups, and I think that's where they expected the participation of the city.
Well, I'm just concerned about what it would mean as far as time from staff and everything else, because it doesn't have the proposal here to say what it is, so I don't like signing something that I'm going to do whatever proposal says if I don't even have the proposal. So.
Thank you, Mike. And are they elected officials or not?
No, this is the
call for a negative vote on this?
Well, there's a motion and a second for it, so we'd have to vote on that, but you could vote against it. It wouldn't be negative.
Ready for a vote?
Well, I'd like to make a comment.
Okay. Fred.
I've been on the Florida League of Cities Policy Committee, which is called Utilities, Natural Resources, and Public Works, since 2016. And the thing that's impressive or depressive, whichever way you want to look at it, almost every city that's in the Florida League of Cities is on that committee. And for every year, we set a priority with the Legislative Assembly to pass new laws and things to protect different things and back certain things. Water has been the #1 issue across the state, up in the Panhandle, in the center part, on the East Coast, the West Coast, down here and all that. So I do support the letter, but I share Mike's concern about what's, it sounds like we're signing on to something without knowing what it is, but I guess we could always get out of it and say we wouldn't do it if it was too big a thing. So I would support it from that point of view. But I agree with Rick, there's been a lot of money spent, but unfortunately we got a lot of mess in water from a lot of neglect for a lot of years, and we're now paying the price for it.
Call for a vote?
I'd just like to make a few comments. I am
Yes,
troubled
ma'am.
by these proposals that come before us from time to time with very little supportive material. And from what I read in the description that was in the letter, the email from Dr. Parsons, is that what they are trying to do is, and I'll read it directly from here, is to co-produce a research agenda for water management and social equity, all right? So what they're trying to do with this money is develop a research agenda, and they're asking the stakeholders to participate in that. So if we want to have any say in what the research that is going to be done by the University Water School for the next decade, then they would ask us to participate in that. I think that we already know what kinds of help we need in solving some of the water issues that we have in this community. So I don't see what our benefit would be out of this. I also am troubled by the word social equity. And I don't understand why this isn't just directed to the science of water management. So I think I'm going to vote against it just on those bases, and to make a point that I am not in favor of signing on to any letters where we don't have full understanding of what we're signing on for in the present and what we may be committing to in the future. So I'm going to vote no on this.
No, me too. So I changed.
Any more? Call for a vote, Debbie?
Councilman Gibson,
No.
Councilman Forbes,
Yeah.
Councilwoman Carumba,
No.
Councilman Purdon,
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr,
No.
Mayor Steinmeier,
No.
Councilman Corey.
Nope.
So it's 4-3.
4-2,
5-2.
5-2.
5-2.
Fails.
5-2 again. Fails.
I was like, it didn't feel like 4-3. That was like the longest
You did math.
ever. I was like,
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. My last item is your COVID-19 update. I wanted to let you know that your staff is working regularly with Lee County for updates on vaccines that will become available. I want to thank Mayor Steinmeier and our Deputy Mayor Mike Gibson for participating in the regional calls with the other mayors and County Commissioner Ruane. As of right now, we're not aware of the next doses to come forward. They are still scheduled for providing doses again tomorrow. I understand that over 5,000 doses have been distributed this time, so there is schedule. They are working through the phone call-in system. It is part of a pilot program that we were selected to move forward, and so they're going to continue to work on those glitches there, but I guess they received over 87,000 calls in 1 minute. So they're going to continue to work through that. I believe this is a state contract that they have through the carrier. They are receiving suggestions. I know Councilman Corey had a few suggestions. I have passed that on to the staff. But I think they're continuing to take their direction from the governor's office and the state on moving forward, and they're looking forward to the opportunity to have more vaccines in the coming weeks.
Arlene, I was a little bit confused by the communication that we got from the county in regard to what happens to people who had gotten to the point where they either said, call me back, and then they never got a call back, or for people who dialed in and were disconnected. It was implied in that last communication that there would be some follow-up to that.
Correct.
Could we make sure that, because I think we should get out to our citizens just what exactly people that did make a contact, whether they would they be put on a reservation system, or is it over? That's
No, I believe they were still contacting, as of yesterday, folks who were in the queue. So since Tuesday, they were still completing their callbacks. And I believe the vendor is saying that they had a way of capturing those numbers that got disconnected. So I believe there was a full capture number, and then probably similar to the online distributions we saw, there was probably some standby as well, because there might be folks in the queue that may not qualify, or there was a glitch. So there was, but it is expected that if they are calling you back, if you miss that call, you do lose your line in the queue. So, but I do understand that they were trying to capture anyone who got disconnected. There was a system that the state contractor said that they were trying to capture.
My reporting from the people that contacted me, that there are people that were on the we'll call you back. They never received a call back, and there are others that got disconnected, and there has been no contact. So could we just clarify if they should just give up, or whether we should give them hope? And
Sure.
And if they get a call back, what are they going to tell them? You know, you didn't make it, or what?
I can tell you a little bit, because I know some people that got called back, and they are calling back. What happened was, after the 5,000 slots filled up, which was almost instantly, the people that they're calling back and still calling back, they're calling up and they're saying, we've got your number, we will call you back, we will schedule you in a future session. But they don't know when the future session is. But they intend to call back and give you the time. The people that didn't get called back, there's probably a technical glitch. But they are doing that, and there still are.
Okay, because I called, and my like, for example, I called and then it was on, and then the call failed. It didn't go through. So will I get a call back?
That, I don't know, but
I think for the folks who actually had made it through to the point of either on hold and got disconnected, where they gave their birthday, those I think are what the vendor is saying that they had captured. I'm not sure if you didn't get past giving your birthday, and either one, you were to give your phone number to get a call back, or you could remain on hold, is what I understood.
All right, got it.
And some folks did get disconnected who were remaining on hold.
All right, well, I think we should clarify that, because those are the questions I'm being asked, and I didn't know how to answer them.
Sure.
Okay, I have knowledge that one person did receive a shot today. He called early and got a call back and got his shot, and waited 15 minutes, and he complimented the process. But when you got 50,000 people that want 5,000 shots, I don't know how to handle it. I got an email, somebody said, oh, it's a terrible setup. I said, well, gee whiz, they didn't ask me how to do it. You tell me how you satisfy 500,000 people at one time with 5,000 shots. It's not like the loaves and the fishes type thing.
Yeah.
So
it's not the
it's a
distribution,
start,
it's
Amy.
It's
a start. I hope it gets better. It'll get better.
I had a very good conversation with Ray Sandelli, and I compliment him for the time he spent with me. And I'm comforted that the commissioners are trying to work on it. And I totally agree with you, Mayor. This is not a distribution problem. Though the distribution can be improved, it's a supply problem. And until we have a regular supply of doses of vaccine, we're going to have this congestion and issues.
Well,
So-
let me comment on that, because there are 24 million doses that have been manufactured. There have been 4 million people in this country that have received the vaccine. What we have is we've had Operation Warp Speed, which has been carried out by the best and the brightest. And we have a distribution system that is being carried out by the dumb and the dumbest. To say that we've got 20 million doses of vaccine still hung up in freezers that have not been distributed out is outlandish. And for the governor of this state to throw NCH under the bus, I mean not NCH, Lee Health under the bus for the problems that have taken place in Lee County on the distribution is just beyond the pale. Collier County has now put vaccine at the disposal of NCH hospitals to distribute the vaccine in Collier County. What Lee County is doing is they're not coming even to the defense of Lee Health, and I hope at some point that Lee Health and the physicians in our county get some of this 24 million of doses of vaccine that are available. So, you know, I think the distribution system is a mess. There's easy ways to fix it. And, you know, I have commented on it to Lee County, and all they're doing is saying, well, we have to follow the state guidelines. And unfortunately, the state's no better at it than they were about protecting us from the COVID virus in the first place.
I wish good health to everybody. We're all here tonight, and thank goodness. So, we move along here. Mayor and council reports. Fred, would you like to start this?
Yeah, one thing I want to make everybody aware of, and if any of you want to be there, let Derek know so he can post a meeting that not only will I be there, but then Rick or Mike, Amy, but roughly at 4 o'clock this Friday, Senator Ray Rodriguez will be there. He may be only able to stay 30 plus minutes. Matt Caldwell, Spencer Roach, Representative Spencer Roach will be there, and he's invited a couple other elected officials. He hasn't shared with me who. And Matt Feeney, our distinguished assistant manager and what he called father of the bioreactor, is going to give a PowerPoint presentation on what's going on with the bioreactor and how it works and all that good stuff. So that's what's going on, and anybody that wants to come. The meeting is not where we're talking, it's where they get to listen, because they're all good people and they can all be helpful to us in the future. It's very similar to what I think Jesse did, which was very good. That's it.
Where is it, Fred?
It'll be at the Wiles Hotel in the conference room.
Thank you.
4 o'clock.
Yeah, I don't think too many people should go to that. It's pretty small there.
And just let Derek know so he can post it if somebody wants to go.
Okay, Mike.
I'm good.
You're all right? Chris?
I got one thing to report. It's an old topic, but I wanted to get final closure on it. It goes back to the allegations made by the former mayor about the way in which Bonita Bay handled chemicals. He requested a study by the Department of Agriculture. That report has been released. None of the allegations of the mayor were found the former mayor were found to be true. That report is available for anybody that wants to see the report through the Bonita Bay Community Association offices. But Bonita Bay now considered as a matter closed. It was a regrettable series of meetings and allegations, but there's been official closure to it.
I'm glad that issue is taken care of. Amy, how about?
No, I just want to say that I have enjoyed our hiatus, and I feel that I took a very much needed rest from the work that we do here on the council. But I do want to wish everybody a happy new year and look forward to a very successful 2021. And hopefully we won't be faced with a new crisis, which we seem to have every year. We'll just get rid of the old one now.
That's it. Amen. Jesse?
Yes, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to not only Lee County Sheriff for their help on the vaccine sites, because they brought extra folks in and they really handled a very tense situation very well. Additionally, our own Parks and Rec was also on site helping with the parking situation because we had so many folks down there. So city staff stepped up, LCSO, really we're trying to make lemonade with lemons. So well done, and it should be noted. So thank you to both of you all for that. And then, our prayers with Congressman Donalds and staff tonight. I spoke to them before the meeting. If you are not aware, there's a number of things going on at the DC right now. Number one, they are currently locked in. Staff is locked in. The congressman is locked in. The building is surrounded. There was a bomb device that was detonated safely by Capitol Police. Somebody was shot. They twice stormed the Capitol, and they can't go home because it's not safe. So Capitol Police are overwhelmed. It's very unfortunate, but those staff members and that congressman are all folks who live down here. So keep them in your prayers and hope that this calms down over the evening. That's all I've got.
Yes.
Well, safety and prayers to
Yes,
the
pray.
folks in the Congress, and God bless America, and God bless our President, Donald J. Trump, and prayers ditto. We need you, buddy.
Well, that is Laura. Well, thank you all. I think we did enough yapping for tonight.
Great.
I appreciate all the input and
So
the
adjourned?
public that showed up. And is there any other business coming? Oh, public comment. Public comment. Can you get him a mic or?
He'll bring you one. I can.
No, I can hear you. New to community, yeah.
I can't understand him, but all I hear is an echo.
Put on your...
Good evening. My name is Mark Rudenberg. I'm a new
Okay,
resident
Mark.
homeowner in the city of Bonita Springs. I've been all over the world, and I believe that Bonita Springs is the most beautiful place in the world.
Amen.
I am wanting to speak from a perspective of a person with disabilities and being in the city for a month, and there are some shortcomings. I want to ask the committee if there was any, or if there is a committee for people with disabilities to voice their input, and I'd like to get a part of the Veterans Council as well. Because veterans need a voice.
You're welcome to attend their meetings. Your disability about the sidewalk, is that part of the problem you have?
He can't hear.
I can't understand.
Okay.
I'm sorry, sir, your name?
My name is Mark Rudenberg.
Sir, what we can do is give you a information card to fill out with your contact information, and we can give you the date and time of the Veterans Advisory Committee when they meet as well. The city participates with Lee County to the Human Services Committee, so there is a Human Service Committee, but it's done through Lee County. We're represented through Lee County for that. We can get you that contact. There's a Lee County staff member we can get you in contact with too. So we'll get you a form.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I want to point out that Mark was on the battleship Iowa when it blew up, and the gun turret blew up, and 40-some sailors were killed and a bunch of others maimed. So he has seen service.
Thank you for your service.
Yes. Thank you.
And welcome.
Arlene is going to make sure you take care of this veteran for us. I know she will.
We have to
So
approve.
Any other business before
We have to approve
So
the minutes of
adjourn?
the prior
the?
minute. Have to approve the minutes.
Minutes.
of the prior minute.
There are no minutes tonight.
Yeah, I didn't get minutes.
No,
There are
no minutes. No
Oh,
minutes.
good.
Any other business before the council tonight?
Just
We're adjourned.